The Blue Jackets don't necessarily have a loud presence at the World Juniors, but what small presence they do have is making an impact. We're talking about how fun Team Czechia is. We're talking about the CBJ prospects that are there in Halifax. And we're talking about the future of this team. We've got Hadi Kalakeche of Locked On NHL Prospect here to talk all about the baby Blue Jackets on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
For Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to bring you everything about the Blue Jackets, good, bad, yelling, cheering. We've got game previews, game recaps, prospect talk. That's what we're going to do today about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms. We are also over on YouTube. So if you haven't hit the subscribe button over there, then please feel free to do so. Today, we're talking World Juniors. We're talking Team Czechia. And we've got Hadi Kalakeche here of Locked On NHL Prospect to talk about how much fun this Czech team is. We're talking about David Jiricek, we're talking about Stanislav Svozil, and we're talking about Martin Rysavy. Those are the three Blue Jackets prospects that are taking part in the tournament this year, and they're having a pretty good one. So I'm just going to get right into my conversation with Hadi about these prospects. So the Blue Jackets are having kind of a low-key World Juniors. There's only 3 players from the prospect list that have gone to the tournament, and they're all on the same team. So I thought, hey, let's check in with Team Czechia, who honestly have been a ton of fun. They upset Canada. They decided to make Austria cry, and they took Sweden to overtime. So I thought, let's get the best prospect guy on, host of Locked On NHL Prospect. We've got Hadi Kalakeche here to talk all about how David Jiricek is doing, how Stanislav Svozil is doing, and how Martin Rysavy is doing. So, Hadi, let's start off with how much fun is Team Czechia in this tournament?
Oh, they're a lot of fun. I mean, especially on defense, they've got so many guys who can jump into the rush, create offensively, create some havoc, and just make life a nightmare off the rush for any team that they face. I mean, they face the best team in this tournament in Canada, and I mean, didn't just beat them; they beat them cleanly, like 5-2. Like they were really good in that game. Obviously, the 5-minute major. In that game, the 5-minute power play they got really sort of benefited them in that sense. But I mean, they were just outstanding. Every game I watch Jiricek, I'm just more and more like, why hasn't a team just thrown a 7th rounder at this kid? Yes, he's 5'9" as a defenseman, not ideal, but his offensive skill is otherworldly, and he's been paired up with David Jiricek, and that pairing's been just money night in, night out for them. Especially in their most recent game against Sweden, which they took to overtime against, again, a very strong team in Sweden. Like this team's a powerhouse. They look really good.
Yeah, for sure. I am not super, I don't have any rooting interest in the World Juniors beyond I want the Blue Jackets prospects to do well, because obviously, Blue Jackets, this is well from my accent. Yep. I am not American or Canadian or any of the other European nations that usually take part in this. So I'm just here for A, the underdogs, and B, the Blue Jackets prospects, and they kind of are the same thing this year. But I wanted to touch on Jiricek specifically. I saw a really good article, which I retweeted onto Locked On Blue Jackets, about David Jiricek's performance specifically, and how he's kind of been this weird anomaly of he's not doing anything that the stats can register, really. But when you watch him play, you're like, oh, this kid is good. And I mean, I've been super high on David Jiricek basically since I figured out the Blue Jackets might be drafting him. He was my number 2 ranked guy for the entire 2022 draft. Not quite sure he's NHL ready yet. I think his skating still has a ways to go, but you watch him in this tournament, like, what do you see from Jiricek that gives you that makes you excited for the future?
Offensive activation, aggression, just pushing the pace constantly, trying to get behind forwards, creating down low below the dots. That's kind of the stuff that I think that Czechia's system favors, but it just plays so well into what David Jiricek's mindset is on the ice. He's one of the most aggressive defenders in terms of his defensive acumen, in terms of what he does off the rush and in his own zone, but that translates perfectly to me into the offensive zone. I think that his ability to, use that aggressive mindset offensively as well helped him a lot. That's one of the things that led to Jiricek's goal that tied the game up against Sweden, and with 5 minutes left, helped Czechia take it to overtime against a really strong team. He took the puck and just pushed down low, and then when he realized that he didn't have any options, he was on his backhand down the left flank and in the left corner of the offensive zone. Sticks his head up, realizes he doesn't have anything. He's fine with curling back and finding plays low to high as well. That's something that's really rare that you don't really find from defensemen, that comfort in carrying the puck below the dots, unless they're like a bona fide offensive defenseman, the Luke Hughes, Quinn Hughes type, Kale McCarr. We saw that from them in their draft year. But Jiricek has always struck me as sort of a strong defensive player who takes pride and value in manning his own zone and doing it well, but it's just so great to see that comfort from him, pushing up offensively, helping his teammates off the rush. He's just been so involved all over the place, and it might not translate to points every time, but it's a projectable habit. It's a strong habit to have that really translates to points at the NHL level. And that's what I'm looking for from Jiricek. I always saw him as a good point man. He gets the puck at the point, he's going to shoot for rebounds really accurately, or he's going to just snipe it in with his heavy shot. But the activation was something that I really wanted to see more and more, and he's just dialed it up to 100 in this World Junior so far.
We've got more coming up about Team Czechia and the Blue Jackets prospect in just a minute, but first I have to talk to you about a campaign from the NHTSA, because it's the holiday season. You're hanging out with some friends, you're putting back a couple of drinks, a couple becomes a few becomes too many, and as the evening comes to an end, people start to head out. You think of calling for a ride, but you live nearby. You could make it home okay. It's not a big deal. And what are the odds that you're going to get pulled over? Anyway, even so, what's the worst that could happen? Your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you lose your job, you could total your car, you could kill someone. Everyone knows about the risks of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again, play it safe, plan ahead to get a ride. You can download the Uber app, you can call a cab. There are so many options. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. Yeah, for sure. I'm wondering obviously the Blue Jackets are going to be watching this tournament. They're still kind of depleted on defense. Mm-hmm. Do you see him getting maybe another call up on the back of a strong World Junior tournament, or do you think it's better for him to continue what he's doing in the AHL, which is frankly dominating? I think he's a point per game, and he's leading all rookie defensemen in the entire AHL. Boring.
See, that's the thing. I mean, you want your defensemen, especially when they're this young and this developed physically, you want them playing at a level where they're exploring their offensive side. They're exploring their puck skills, because I don't think Jiricek really has much physical refinement left. I mean, he's got an NHL body. So I think it would probably be a good idea to help him just sort of ride the coattails of the strong World Juniors he's having and give him a shot, maybe 5 or 6 games at the NHL level, just to see if it can keep up in terms of his brain. And just keep up with the NHL pace. But I have no problem with him playing in the AHL either. The important thing is for me that he plays top 4 minutes, consistently gets pucks, consistently gets puck touches. If he can do that at the NHL level, perfect. I mean, it's perfect. There's no better practice for the NHL than the NHL, right? But at the same time, if he's not getting those puck touches, if he's not playing top 4 minutes, play him at a level where he will, because those are the things that are gonna get him the proper sort of development time required on the puck. Because no matter how good you are, it's so rare that a player, unless you're like Connor Bedard and Connor McDavid's level of player, there's no way you're ready for the NHL pace without having played a single NHL game. It's just a completely different stratosphere, and it's severely understated. The one thing that any rookie mentions when you ask them what's different about the NHL, they immediately say how fast it is. And it's just no one's ready for it unless you're generational. So, if he's ready for it after the World Juniors, if you can see that his mind is keeping up or that he's showing signs of progression, and that after 5 or 6 games, there's a difference between the first and the sixth game in terms of his processing speed, then great. But if that's not the case, there's no problem at all with letting him dominate the AHL, because the AHL, I think, is decent enough practice for the NHL in terms of pace of play. I think in terms of speed, it's the NHL, the KHL, and then the AHL. That's how it goes in terms of pace of play, in terms of priority. So it's not the worst league to play in my opinion. But you might as well give him a shot if he's having a strong World Juniors tournament like he's having right now.
Yeah, exactly. And this is something I've kind of been talking about a little bit, like on the show to other people. The season's lost. Why not see what you've got in?
Might as well, yeah.
Especially your guys like Jiricek, who are in the AHL, and you don't have to fly them over from Europe. You don't have to pull them out of juniors, etc. But speaking of Czech players that are playing in the major juniors, Stanislav Svozil, who as of the start of World Juniors was, I believe, second in the entire WHL in assists, only to his Regina Pats teammate Connor Bedard, which is pretty impressive company. He had, I thought, a really great game against Canada specifically. Again, was really great against Austria. What have you seen from Svozil in this tournament?
Man, I don't know where any of this came from with Svozil. I mean, I did not see this level of offensive skill from him prior to, in his draft here. I saw a very responsible, very intelligent, defensive defenseman who's going to shut you down on the rush. You can't get past him. He's got great mobility, all that, but I didn't see much in terms of puck skill from him, and he's just exploded offensively, not just this season in the World Juniors as a captain of Czechia, but also with the Regina Pats. And I sort of chalked it off when I saw the stat line and I saw the game. So, I mean, he's playing a lot of minutes with Bedard. That's probably contributing to what's going on here. But no, in isolation, Stanislav Svozil he's insane. Like, not just in terms of like being good, he's actually insane. Like he'll join rushes that he has no business joining, and it actually works. Just because his intelligence is so high end, especially you can see it in this tournament. I mean, obviously it's a small sample size, but the players he's playing with half the time aren't Connor Bedard level. They're not even sort of Tanner Howe level, who's 2024 eligible, who plays for Regina as well, who's been pretty good. It's just he's got so much offensive acumen. He doesn't have the most heavy or accurate shot, but he just places it so well, and he times the shot really well. He delays it well enough so that he's able to wait out goaltenders and keep them on their toes. His playmaking is out of this world. I mean, he's made some passes in this tournament, especially on the breakout, that have just blown my mind. Again, I didn't see any of this coming from Svozil, so I've got some watching to do to see what the progression was, but it seems like in one off season, he's turned his puck skills from a weakness to a strength. It's really impressive.
Yeah, I feel like the thing with Svozil was he had a really, he had a down year when he was drafted, and he fell out of the first round, which was, I believe, was where he was projected, and then he ended up going, I think, in the third round. The Blue Jackets took him 69th overall. And I immediately after that, I think I had like 3 or 4 guys in my DMs like, how did Svozil fall so far? He's going to be a stud. And I was like, okay, cool. So I like made a mental note, keep an eye on this guy, kind of see how he's doing. And yeah, he's a guy that I'm really excited about on a different level to Jiricek, but he feels like a guy that maybe 2 seasons down the line, the idea of, putting him on the power play unit with, Laine, Gaudreau, Johnson, and just watching him just hand the puck to any of those guys and then standing back, it feels like it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, he walks the blue line so well as well, and that's a lot. That's mainly what opens up so many passing lanes for him. Like, obviously, you need the intelligence to spot those passing lanes and exploit them, but he just opens them up so well. He just, he opens his hips up. He uses his feet to sort of walk the blue line really intelligently. He doesn't sort of overdo it or underdo it. He's just constantly deceiving and manipulating, and that's one thing that, I mean, again, I did not see this coming from Svozil. I mean, yes, he had a down season in his draft year, but I thought there was a pretty noticeable lack of sort of high end puck skill, and it's just he's reached a different stratosphere this year, and it's great to see.
Yeah, for sure. In a minute, we've got more talk from Hadi about the Czech CBJ prospect. That's coming up next on Locked On Blue Jackets. I feel kind of bad for the third Blue Jackets prospect on this Team Czechia because he has kind of flown under the radar a little bit, obviously with, Svozil being named captain and deciding to just be involved in every goal. Jiricek having a really strong tournament. What have you seen from Martin Rysavy that's either good or bad, or kind of how has his tournament been as kind of a depth draft pick for the Blue Jackets?
I mean, he's got speed and creativity. I think those are the two sort of things that he can build his game around and do something with. I don't really see a top six or even a strong third line NHLer out of Rysavy. I see the type of player who's going to give a lot of support on a third or fourth line, but it's not going to be a main play driver. It's mainly because I don't see a lot of hockey sense from him. He's not constantly scanning. He's not the type of guy who's going to have eyes in the back of his head, but he's constantly pushing the pace and he's constantly trying things. And in this World Juniors, it hasn't sort of translated to points, but it's creating a lot of energy, a lot of momentum for Czechia. So when he leaves the ice after a shift, the next line up just hits the ground running. They already, that's what I mean by support, is that it's not just by, what he does with the puck. It's in terms of the energy that he brings, the pace of play that he brings. It's just so tiring for the opposition team that they kind of tend to end up sort of sitting back for a bit, and that benefits the first line, for example, when they hop on the ice after that. So yeah, again, just not anything sort of outstanding. I would sort of temper my expectations about Rysavy, but speed and creativity and in good quantity, I think that's what he brings to an NHL team.
Yeah, I feel like, and this is something that kind of just occurred to me, kind of as we were talking. I wonder if he's the kind of player that maybe is a top line AHL guy for most of his career, and then he comes up with injuries or something like that. I was thinking specifically about that Dryden Hunt shift that went viral a couple of weeks ago, of where he doesn't super do anything with the puck necessarily. He just is a huge pain in the butt long enough for, I think, basically his line mates to change, and then for the top line guys to get on and take over. And I wonder if that's kind of what we could see from Rysavy. He's got the speed to beat the other team on the forecheck. He's got the creativity to kind of keep hold of the puck. And I wonder if that's something that, we'll see maybe one or two highlight reel plays out of him a season, and then that's it, which is not the worst thing in the world for a guy that I believe they took in the 4th or 5th round.
Yeah, for a 7th round pick, I mean, this is not bad at all for Rysavy. I think that, if you get any NHLer out of a 7th round pick, you win. Like, most of these guys never see professional ice, let alone the NHL. So it's difficult to sort of, get lots of value out of a player like this. But, he was decent in his last World Juniors. I think 3 points in 7 games, something like that. Pointless in his last 3 games, in his 3 games so far in this World Juniors. But I mean, a 6'3" guy who's going to push the pace, who's going to drive the other team into their own zone and keep them there. I mean, you don't get that anywhere, really. I mean, yes, he's missing the puck skills to be sort of a top end guy, but if he plays an entire career in the AHL and plays a game or two even in the NHL, that's a win in my opinion for Columbus. So yeah, I mean, he's not at all on the level of Svozil and Jiricek in terms of upside, but I mean, he could very well be a 4th liner who does a lot of great work for your team and gives you good minutes.
For sure. If they can turn him into, say, if we're looking at a Blue Jacket specific guy for the listeners, if they can turn him into like a Carson Meyer, perhaps, like that feels like a victory to me. But we're gonna finish up here, I think, and then Hadi will be back later to preview the 2023 draft, because the Blue Jackets are probably going to do pretty well in terms of where they're going to be picking. But for people who want to, Hadi's been doing some really great work reviewing all of the World Junior games so far. So if you guys want to catch up on the World Juniors, catch up on Prospect, Hadi is the place to go. Where can people find you and your show?
Yeah, so the show's really easy to find. It's Locked On NHL Prospects. It's all over YouTube, Spotify, Odyssey, any podcasting app you want. It's up there. You can find us on Twitter at LO_NHL Prospects. My Twitter handle's right there on the screen. If you're listening, it's Hadi K_scouting. I'm also on my own personal YouTube. I occasionally post some videos about different prospects. But yeah, everything you want from me is on Twitter. On my personal Twitter and on Locked On NHL Prospects Twitter. So that's mainly where you can find us.
Awesome. I am going to hit end. And that's about all I've got for you today. Tomorrow, we are going to be previewing the New Year's Eve game against the Chicago Blackhawks. We've got Jack Bushman from Locked On Blackhawks here to tell us all about how his team is doing. And we kind of do a little bit of commiserating over both cheering for and covering a bad team. And does Connor Bedard make it all worth it at the end? That's coming up on tomorrow's episode. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find this podcast at LO_Blue Jackets. If you have comments, questions, criticisms, you can email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. And thank you all once again for listening, for making this your first listen. I super appreciate it. We're on YouTube. We're on every podcatching app of choice. Like I said, tomorrow we're going to be doing an episode with Jack Bushman, and then next week we've got some more prospect talk with Hadi as we really get into our draft coverage. So that's coming up next week. So keep an eye out for that. Thank you for listening. And until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.